Hello and welcome to Broadcasting Scotland. My name is Lewis McGlynn.
Hello and welcome to Broadcasting Scotland. My name is Saoirse Healy.
Hello and welcome to Broadcasting Scotland. My name is Donald C. Stewart. Broadcasting Scotland is Scotland's independent broadcaster, providing factual news, reporting on the issues important to the people of Scotland.
We are committed to public service broadcasting, and with your support, we will produce even more programmes.
Provide opportunities for young people interested in media production and broadcasting, and challenge preconceptions of what Scottish media looks like, amplifying Scotland's voice and reflecting its communities.
We can already deliver high-quality live news, and we will create the highest quality programmes for you to enjoy. But we can only do that with your support.
So please subscribe to and share our channel or donate to Broadcasting Scotland via the link in the description. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. The first item of business is general questions. At question number 1, I call Bill Kidd.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government regarding any potential environmental impact, what its response is to reports that a Category A nuclear safety event occurred at Faslane Naval Base between January and April this year.
Cabinet Secretary Gillian Martin.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Defence, including the operation of the Faslane Naval Base, is a reserved matter. However, the Scottish Government places great importance on the safe, secure and responsible management of radioactive substances while protecting people and the environment. As such, repeated reports of serious incidents at Faslane are extremely worrying. Of course, the only way to get rid of Trident is with independence, and this SNP Scottish Government's long-standing position is that nuclear weapons have no place in an independent Scotland.
Bill Kidd.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that response. Can I ask the Cabinet Secretary if there is any information that has been made available by the Westminster Government to the Scottish Government in terms of addressing the radioactive waste released by this nuclear safety failure and of work in cleaning the affected area and ensuring the physical health of local residents following this event?
Cabinet Secretary.
In short, the answer is no. It's regrettable that the Ministry of Defence has not released details of the reported Category A nuclear site event report, given they define Category A as the most serious. They have informed us that the incident posed no risk to the public and did not result in any radiological impact to the environment. However, the Scottish Government has not received any further information on the nature of the incident and, given nuclear weapons are an ever-present danger, this is disappointing and does not provide the public with the reassurance that they need. They have also informed us that the incident reported was handled in accordance with the extant policy and in collaboration with the Defence Nuclear Safety Regulator, but that has been the sum of it.
Ash Regan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I agree with the Minister, Cabinet Secretary. This is extremely concerning that there has been a Category A safety event at Faslane, and it certainly brings Scotland's environmental risks from nuclear into very sharp focus. With the NDA draft strategy of 2025 proposing a transfer of defence nuclear liabilities, including Vulcan, into the civil sector, will the Scottish Government step up to ensure Scotland does not inherit Westminster's nuclear legacy in secret? And will she make a commitment to have a full debate here so that we can scrutinise things like risk assessments before any decisions are made?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I'd like to go into detail of what Ash Regan has just put forward, but with regard to a debate, I'm always willing to have a debate on this issue. I think it's an issue that concerns many people across Scotland. And although there is an agreement between SEPA and the Defence Ministry on reporting incidents such as this and the impact that they have, I think that it's very worrying that these events are actually happening in the first place. With regard to a debate, I believe that Bill Kidd actually did submit a motion for a members' debate on this issue, and hopefully I'll see that getting the support across the chamber that it deserves.
Question number 2, Maurice Golden.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government how it is supporting entrepreneurship.
Deputy First Minister.
Well, recent Tech Nation data shows Scotland's start-up economy is booming. Our 19% growth rate is among the fastest in Europe. Our ambition is to establish Scotland as one of Europe's fastest growing start-up economies. That's backed by a record £30 million of investment this year, including a £2.9 million proof of concept fund, translating research discoveries into commercial propositions. And we, of course, continue to support TechScaler as well, amongst Europe's best start-up incubators, and I believe one of this government's finest achievements.
Maurice Golden.
I thank the Deputy First Minister for that response. The NatWest Accelerator programme has already supported over 10,000 new businesses, created 12,000 jobs and drove £700 million worth of investment. This should be celebrated. However, throughout Scotland, businesses consistently raise concerns about a fragmented funding landscape, overly complex procurement processes and the sheer number of agencies they are expected to navigate, over 300 in total. Does the Deputy First Minister agree that business support must be simplified and streamlined to ensure entrepreneurs are better supported to make their ambitions a reality?
Deputy First Minister.
The very principle that underpins Maurice Golden's question is what prompted Mark Logan to essentially design the blueprint which we've been putting into place over the last few years. And if you look at the compound annual growth rate, for example, of key European start-up economies, it shows that the approach taken to streamline is working. I mentioned Scotland's 19% growth rate. If I compare that, UK 12.5%, France 12%, Sweden 10%, Netherlands 10%. So whilst there's obviously continued work to do, bringing everything together into TechScaler is one example. Equally, in an adaptable and innovative market, you don't want to over-micromanage the process either. So I believe that the approach that we're taking is working, but we need to collaborate with NatWest and others. And of course, NatWest figures out earlier this year showed again that we continue to grow this year in terms of the highest number, one of the highest numbers of start-up rates in UK.
Audrey Nicholl.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And I welcome the record funding for entrepreneurism the Scottish Government is investing this year, which comes alongside the news that Scotland is now the fastest growing start-up nation in Europe. So can the Deputy First Minister say any more about the renewed support the Scottish Government is providing to start-ups and any collaboration with the private sector?
Deputy First Minister.
I thank Audrey Nicholl for that point around collaboration with the private sector. One of the best examples in recent weeks has been the commitment to co-invest in Scottish Edge. So we have committed to investing £3.6 million in Scottish Edge over the next 3 years, which means that leading entrepreneurs have committed additional funding to Scottish Edge. Our risk capital market grew 19% to £704 million, with significant private sector participation as well. So all of that is all of these are examples of what's actually happening. In other words, it's outcomes and outputs rather than just focusing in on the inputs.
Question number 3, Liz Smith.
To ask the Scottish Government what discussions it has had with Transport Scotland about motorway gantry signs.
Cabinet Secretary Fiona Hislop.
The messages displayed on electronic signs on gantries are part of the Traffic Scotland service provided by Transport Scotland. Traffic Scotland gathers real-time information on Scotland's trunk road and motorway network, and this informs messaging displayed on gantries. Messages can include reduced speed limits, implementation of lane restrictions, or information regarding incidents or congestion ahead. These messages are deployed as soon as possible after verification and aim to reduce the disruption that is caused by trunk road closures, congestion, events, roadworks, adverse weather, accidents and other incidents. When gantry signs are not being used to support a high-priority operational response, such as those above, background safety information is displayed to coincide with topical events or other areas of road safety focus. Those messages are reviewed annually by Traffic Scotland.
Liz Smith.
Thank you. The Cabinet Secretary, I asked exactly the same question of her in June 2023 and also of her predecessor, Hamza Yousaf, in 2017. And I'm going to ask it again on behalf of my constituents in Mid-Scotland and Fife, who make extensive use of the M90 and M9 motorways, because there are still issues with gantry signs that are not time-sensitive. Indeed, I've seen it for myself. Information that there is congestion and queues ahead when there is no such thing. And that's unhelpful to drivers who have to make a decision about which roads that they're going to take. So this time in asking, can I ask that these constituents be assured by the Cabinet Secretary that will press Transport Scotland to do something about this ongoing problem?
Cabinet Secretary.
So it is important that dynamic messaging is timely and accurate. Also, driver frustration, whether it's dismissal or others, should be avoided. But obviously there are thousands of messages displayed and removed on a daily basis in response to changing and dynamic situations. And indeed, when she last wrote to me, we asked if there were any specific occurrences, because specific occurrences can actually help improve the quality control. And indeed, Traffic Scotland undertook quality checks in November 2023 following the intervention by the member. And my officials have also recently instructed Traffic Scotland to undertake further sample checks for sign setting and removal on the motorway network, including between Fife and Edinburgh, and that process is ongoing. But it is helpful, and I would say Traffic Scotland welcome reports. I would point out that the Traffic Scotland's website will be unavailable between the 13th and 16th due to essential building works at the National Control Centre. So I'm just putting that as a public information notice that's being advertised. But I do think that specific examples, particularly during weekdays, allows them to pinpoint what the exact issue is.
Question number 4, Tim Eagle.
To ask the Scottish Government what support it can offer to help local authorities protect council-run and arm's-length external organisation-run community facilities.
Cabinet Secretary Shona Robertson.
The Scottish Government recognises the critical role of community facilities across Scotland and provided a record local government settlement in 2025-26. That record funding helps local authorities support their local priorities, which would include both council and external-led community facilities, and will continue to work in partnership with local government to ensure that the people of Scotland continue to receive the high-quality public services that they expect and deserve.
Tim Eagle.
Well, the SNP will tell me that council funding has gone up, but that only brings a wry smile to the face of councillors in Scotland, because the actual truth is that cliff-edge finances are leaving some vital community facilities in rack and ruin. Facilities like that close to the First Minister at the Jewis Centre, where I believe the ice rink is still under threat. But also, more importantly, in Murray, where Murray Leisure Centre have temporarily closed the ice rink to the shock of local users. Curling, ice hockey and ice skating are all sports we should be encouraging and not closing. Will the Minister ensure they do all they can to find new ways, a new pot of support to keep Murray Leisure Centre and all of these vital facilities open?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, let's put a couple of facts on the record. First of all, local government funding has increased. According to the Accounts Commission, for the last 2 years, the Accounts Commission confirmed a real terms increase to local government funding. So that is a fact. Murray Council have received an additional 6.6%. compared to 24-25. I would point out to Tim Eagle, of course, it's the Tories who run Murray Council, so perhaps he should have a word with his own Conservative leadership in Murray Council. In terms of the issues of ice rinks specifically, I appreciate that there will be significant concern felt in the curling community in Elgin in particular. and we're aware of the challenging financial circumstances that face energy-dense sports and leisure facilities. And of course, it is Murray Leisure Trust who have stated that the closure of Elgin Ice Rink is a result of increasing energy costs. So the UK Government have the ability to provide appropriate energy bill relief to facilities that require it. We will consider how we can continue to raise these concerns with the UK Government. Sports Scotland continue to engage with Murray Leisure, Scottish Curling and key partners to understand the current situation at a local level.
Cabinet Secretary.
So those discussions will continue.
Thank you. Question number 5, Gordon MacDonald.
Presiding Officer, to ask the Scottish Government what recent discussions the Economy Secretary and Business Minister have had with the UK Government regarding tariff exemptions and other support for the Scotch whisky industry.
Minister Richard Lockhead.
My ministerial colleagues and myself regularly meet with the sector to discuss the challenges and opportunities that they face. And indeed, in July, I wrote to UK Government ministers responsible for the sector, calling for action on several trade issues facing the Scotch whisky sector, as well as other iconic Scottish products. And of course, as the Chamber will be aware, the First Minister has been leading from the front and on our intensive engagement with the sector, whilst also raising this important issue with the Prime Minister and directly with the US President this week, because removing the 10% tariff between the US and Scotland would of course deliver economic benefits in both countries.
Gordon MacDonald.
I thank the Minister for that answer. The Scotch Whisky Association recently released new data showing over 1,000 jobs have been lost in the Scotch whisky industry since the last UK budget. In addition to the excise duty increase, the UK Labour Government introduced a national insurance increase, while energy prices remain too high, impacting energy-intensive industries for which they can access no support. Ahead of the next UK budget, what representations will the Scottish Government make to the UK Government to ensure our economy and businesses are better supported to weather difficult economic headwinds?
Minister.
The member raises good points. Indeed, I, along with many other members, was at an event with the Scotch Whisky Association last night in Edinburgh, and I have to say the First Minister standing up for the sector and taking their case directly to Washington went down like a fine dram with the Scotch whisky industry. And of course, we now need the same from the UK Government to deliver both in the tariff deal, which is now their opportunity to do that, but also to address issues like the alcohol duty, because reducing the draft duty in the last budget widened the disadvantage facing the spirit sector in our country and is an inherent unfairness in alcohol duty. And there's other issues like national insurance contributions that have been risen, which are also affecting hospitality, which in turn affects the Scotch whisky industry as well. So hopefully the member's right that the UK Government now has to stand up for the whisky industry and address those issues in the forthcoming budget as well.
Murdo Fraser.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I should remind members of my register of interest in relation to hospitality received from the Scotch Whisky Association. And can I join my co-convener of the cross-party group on Scotch whisky in welcoming any moves to reduce damaging tariffs and costs on the industry. But I'm surprised the Minister cannot see the contradiction in the SNP position. If we were members of the EU, as the SNP demand, we'd currently be facing 15% tariffs on Scotch whisky exports, not 10% that we have as part of the United Kingdom. And it's only Brexit freedoms that give us the opportunity to negotiate away those tariffs that we wouldn't have if we were in the EU. So when are the SNP going to rethink their damaging policy on rejoining the EU that would do such destruction to the Scotch whisky sector?
Minister.
If the member was paying attention, you'd know the Scottish Government doesn't want any tariffs in the Scotch whisky industry, either 15%, 10%. And just as his government for many years failed the Scotch whisky industry in relation to the 75% duty on every bottle of Scotch whisky, thanks to his party, the current UK Government so far has got a lot to do to stand up for the Scotch whisky industry as well, and they can address that in the forthcoming budget, as well as following in the footsteps of the First Minister and raising the tariff issue and concluding the deal now that the First Minister set the scene for that deal, hopefully.
Question number 6, Evelyn Tweed.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what measures it is taking to develop year-round support for and promotion of high street businesses in light of the recent Scotland Loves Local Week.
Minister.
Scotland Loves Local Week was a fantastic opportunity to spotlight the year-round campaign, which encourages people to shop in their local businesses, and mechanisms such as the Scotland Loves Local gift card scheme and award encourages people to think and spend more local first, and also recognises that local businesses are so crucial in retaining wealth in our local economy and encouraging vibrancy in our town centres.
Evelyn Tweed.
I thank the Minister for that answer. Go Forth Stirling bids have reported 26 new business openings in Stirling over the last year, including international brands and small independents. To ask the Minister if they will join me in celebrating in these new openings, and ask what steps the Government are taking to reduce long-term empty units on our high streets.
Minister.
I do join the member in celebrating the new businesses in her constituency, and it's fantastic to see the statistics last week of the new businesses created in Scotland being much higher in the first half of this year compared to the first half of last year, and also striking to note that the biggest sector represented in that increase was hospitality businesses as well, and that's very good news for that sector and for the Scottish economy. And the Scottish Government will continue to work with local authorities on our competitive rates regime, which of course addresses the issue of empty and vacant units in our high streets as well, and gives flexibility to local authorities to address that.
Brief question 8, Willie Rennie.
Government whether it will provide an update on its discussions with the University of Dundee and the Scottish Funding Council regarding the university's financial situation.
Secretary Jenny Gilruth.
Since my statement to Parliament in June, I visited the university and held several meetings with university leadership and the Scottish Funding Council, as well as engaging with trade unions and local MSPs, including Mr Rennie. My officials are holding weekly trilateral meetings with the SFC and the university. A university recovery plan was submitted to the SFC in August, and the SFC wrote to the university a week later with an alternative approach. All parties are now working urgently towards an agreed way forward that ensures a long-term managed recovery.
Willie Rennie.
Ministers continue to say that the situation is urgent, but we're almost a year on from when we first discovered the depths of the problem at the University of Dundee. We need a sustainable recovery plan for Dundee. When is it going to happen?
Cabinet Secretary.
I thank Mr Rennie for his interest. Obviously, he will be aware of my engagement with himself, as I've alluded to, and with the university leadership and the Scottish Funding Council throughout the summer recess, and we will be meeting again next week. We are working at pace with the SFC and the university, and of course it is for the university to come back with an alternative approach. We expect to receive that alternative approach next Monday, and I committed to meet with Mr Rennie and with colleagues from across the affected region next week, along with the Scottish Funding Council. It is imperative that we find an approach for Dundee University that has the buy-in of the wider university community. That includes staff and students. They have to be fundamental to this, and of course the backing of the court, leading with a clear mandate. So I look forward to our engagements next week to that end, Presiding Officer.
That concludes general questions. The next item of business is First Minister's questions. Question number 1, I call Russell Finlay.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Next week, MSPs will vote on the Government's Victims Bill. And during my time here, I've tried to help crime victims whose suffering is far too often compounded by a justice system that is slow, secretive and unjust. My party has campaigned to give victims a meaningful voice and greater rights to basic information. We've campaigned to end the not proven verdict, which is in the bill, and it's welcome that John Swinney listened to our concerns about the plan to remove juries from some trials, which has now been dropped. The Government has shifted its position on the Victims Bill, and we truly welcome that, but they haven't gone far enough. Does John Swinney really think this bill will make a material difference to victims?
First Minister.
Yes, I do, Presiding Officer, and that has been because of the very careful engagement that has been taken forward by the Justice Secretary in taking this bill through Parliament. Mr Finlay and I spent some time when I was on the back benches, and as he was, scrutinising this bill when it came to Parliament. Much of the evidence we heard during that process persuaded me that when I became First Minister, there had to be changes made to the bill, and that was because the Government listened to the evidence that was put in front of us. We will continue to do that, and many of the proposals and reforms that have been suggested in the bill are designed to achieve the objective that Mr Finlay has put to me, which is to make sure that the interests of victims are better protected by our justice system.
and I am confident that the bill, after the scrutiny that Parliament gives it next week, will be in a position to do so.
Russell Finlay.
Thank you. Liz Shanks campaigns for victims' rights since her truly horrific domestic violence ordeal featured in a BBC documentary. We agree with her that all crime victims should be told, must be told, when secretive plea deals are struck in criminal cases. And to be fair, the Government has given some ground on plea deals, but their changes fall far short of what is needed. Now, Liz and the other women met with the Justice Secretary, who appeared to say all of the right things. But this is what Liz told me today. They're pretending to listen, but crime victims will continue to be badly let down by this bill, which could have done so much more. So for the sake of Liz and all other victims, will John Swinney back my plea deal amendments?
First Minister.
The first thing I want to say is I want to pay tribute to the courage of women such as Liz Shanks, because it's invariably women who have had to come forward with the courage to talk about their experience to ensure that victims are more central to the criminal justice system. And I know that the Justice Secretary has engaged substantively on all of these issues. We have amendments in front of us in Parliament on Tuesday, and the Government will consider all of the amendments that are submitted to come to the right conclusion. But I do provide the assurance to Parliament and to Liz Shanks that we have listened to the opinions that have been expressed to us. We have brought forward changes to the bill, and the Government is absolutely committed to ensuring that the voice of victims is central to the way in which the criminal justice system proceeds.
Russell Finlay.
Of course, the engagement is welcome, but it has to be meaningful. And plea deals aren't the only part of the bill that don't do what it should. My colleague Liam Kerr has submitted an amendment that would instigate a Scottish grooming gangs inquiry. While we believe there should be a full public inquiry, our amendment would at least guarantee an investigation. These predatory criminals raped vulnerable girls, and the Government should want to properly examine this scandal, but have so far been resistant. So will John Swinney fix the bill so that it gives grooming gang victims the voice, the inquiry and the justice that they truly deserve?
First Minister.
Of course, has taken a number of very significant steps in this area of policy, not least of which is the establishment of the continuing Scottish Child Abuse Inquiry that is led by Lady Smith, which has been sitting since 2016. And that is, I think, providing the type of welcome and significant scrutiny that is required on this issue. There is, of course, separate work underway by Police Scotland and the Crown, exploring individual cases, some of which are the cases that Mr Finlay has raised with me just now, to establish whether there is further detailed scrutiny required on the question of grooming gangs. And I have to say, at this stage, from my reading of the information that I have seen, I am not persuaded of the necessity of that further inquiry, but the work is underway in Police Scotland and the Crown to advise ministers on that point, and we will of course consider that and discuss that with Parliament in due course. But I think it is important that I make clear that the criminal justice system has taken very hard, significant action to bring people to account for utterly unacceptable behaviour, and that will remain the case.
So Finlay.
The truth is the Scottish Child Abuse Inquiry won't look at the grooming gangs, nor does it even look at the industrial-scale abuse in Scottish football. This bill could give victims real transparency over plea deals. It could give victims much greater involvement in the parole process. It could put a spotlight on the grooming gangs scandal. It could do so much more, but it doesn't. It won't meaningfully change the justice system. It's a letdown for victims. If he wants to support victims and of my party, then John Swinney must do more. We could back a bill that makes a real difference, but as it stands, this is a victims' law in name only. So will John Swinney listen to victims, show some ambition and make more changes before next week's vote?
First Minister.
I don't for one moment in any way want to give a signal to Parliament that I am wanting to do anything in this bill that does not address the legitimate concerns of victims about our criminal justice system. That's why the Government has brought forward the bill. I had the privilege of sitting and hearing evidence in the Criminal Justice Committee when I was on the back benches. As a result of listening to victims, I came into office as First Minister and, working with the Justice Secretary, have revised this bill to make sure that the interests of victims are ever more central to the bill. So I do not accept the characterisation of the bill that Mr Finlay has put to me. Now, there are legitimate issues which will be brought forward that people will want to press the Government about. That is entirely appropriate parliamentary scrutiny, and I welcome that. But what I have to say to Parliament is that this Government has brought forward legislation to do exactly what is required in the criminal justice system just now, and that is to put the voice of victims more centrally into the criminal justice system, and I am confident that the bill that Parliament considers next week will do exactly that.
Question number 2, Anna Sarwar.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The SNP has a soft-touch approach to crime in our country. Since the last election, shoplifting is up 124%. Shop staff are going to work fearing for their safety, and communities are being undermined by criminals who feel like they can get away with it. So will John Swinney and his SNP government apologise for effectively legalising shoplifting in Scotland?
First Minister.
Well, I think Mr Sarwar is at the bottom of the barrel today, if I may say so to Parliament. The accusation that there is a soft-touch justice system in Scotland might have some validity if we were not incarcerating more people than any other Western European country, and if our prisons were not facing the increase in population that they are facing. So the charge that Mr Sarwar has put to me is a baseless charge which is unworthy of the Labour leader in the Scottish Parliament, and he should withdraw it today. Now, in the budget, which Mr Sarwar never voted for, we put money in to tackle retail crime, to support and work with the retail sector, and Mr Sarwar couldn't even bring himself to vote for the provision. So what we have today is another example. What we have today is another example of Mr Sarwar coming in here, ramping up the rhetoric and failing to deliver on the reality for the people of our country.
Anna Sarwar.
Presiding Officer, John Swinney is living on another planet. He wants to focus on inputs when the reality is shoplifting is up 124%, and clear-up rates show that fewer than half of all shoplifting crimes are even solved. And I spoke to shop workers in Glasgow yesterday. They told me that after years of SNP police cuts, officers now only investigate an incident of shoplifting if shop workers can give them the suspect's name. If the shoplifter isn't already known, then there is almost no chance that they will be even investigated, let alone the criminal caught. The situation is so bad that businesses in Edinburgh have had to form a shop watch scheme to try and investigate crimes against their own businesses. Victims of crime being forced to investigate offences perpetrated against them. Is that really the best we can do, all while so many crimes go unreported? Retailers Against Crime Director Maxine Fraser has described the situation as being, in her words, out of control. So will John Swinney admit, like so many other issues, he's given up on keeping Scotland's communities safe?
First Minister.
So again, on the budget that Mr Sarwar never voted for, this Government put in record investment of £1.64 billion for policing, enabling us to deliver police services the length and breadth of the country. Secondly, in this respect, the Government has put in resources to work with the retail sector to tackle the issue of retail crime. And in addition to all of that, the Government is working to ensure that we have an effective police presence in every community in Scotland to ensure that these issues are addressed. So, Mr Sarwar is not in any position, if he's not prepared to vote for the government's budget, to then come here and complain about any other issues whatsoever. And what this government is determined to do is to work with different organisations in Scotland to protect the public in a country where crime is at one of its lowest levels in 40 years. In 40 years. I'll say that again with all the heckling. The crime in Scotland is at one of its lowest levels in 40 years. Yeah. That's because of this investment by this government, which the Labour Party failed to support.
Anna Sarwar.
John Swinney is not living in the real world. The SNP's record on justice is nothing short of criminal. And it's no wonder communities across Scotland feel abandoned. Police want action just as much as victims, but the truth is they are just another victim of SNP incompetence. Under the SNP, 800 fewer police officers on the streets. Police station after police station closed. The bill for Glasgow's new prison soaring 10 times over to £1 billion, and violent crime on the rise. No wonder he's running a million miles away from his own record. John Swinney's SNP government has failed workers, failed businesses, failed the police. So why is John Swinney allowing a tiny minority to make life difficult for Scotland's hard-working majority?
First Minister.
Last week, Mr Sarwar challenges me about the record of my government. I'm very proud of the record of my government, and I'll defend the record of my government. And last week I said to Parliament on Thursday, in response to Mr Greer, that if anyone wanted to have an idea about what a Labour government would look like, they only needed to look at the chaos in London. Well, that was on Thursday, before we got to Friday, with the resignation of the Deputy Prime Minister and chaos added to chaos. Then we had the beautiful and unjust moment of the sacking of Ian Murray as the Secretary of State for Scotland. How on earth can the Labour Party come here and challenge me on the record when they're presiding over the shambles that the Labour government is presiding over in Westminster? The Labour Party's got nothing to offer Scotland. This government's delivering for the people, and we're going to carry on doing exactly that.
Question number 3, Ross Greer.
Thank you. The President of Israel, whose own statements have been cited by the International Court of Justice as plausible evidence of Israel's genocidal intent, was welcomed to the UK with open arms by Keir Starmer this week. The same President who signed his name on bombs that were dropped on homes, hospitals and schools. The same President who said there are no innocent civilians in Gaza. Keir Starmer is treating peaceful protesters like terrorists while rolling out the red carpet for the head of a genocidal apartheid regime. But it's not just Israel's visiting heads of state. British citizens and residents have travelled to serve in Israel's occupation forces, making them complicit in war crimes. This Parliament passed the International Criminal Court Act in 2001, making genocide and war crimes offences in Scots law regardless of where they are committed. So can I ask the First Minister to confirm that this law will be applied in full and that anyone in Scotland who served in Israel's occupation forces will be investigated and, if necessary, prosecuted for the part they have played in the crime of genocide and occupation?
First Minister.
First of all, Presiding Officer, I understand the depth of concern that Mr Greer puts to me today about the visit of the President of Israel to the Prime Minister. I understand the Prime Minister's argument that there is a need for there to be dialogue with the Israeli government to try to bring about a resolution of the unjustifiable assault on Gaza. I understand that point. What I'd want to be more confident of is that the President of Israel heard from the Prime Minister a series of actions that the United Kingdom government will take to bring Israel to account for the disproportionate attack that has been made on Gaza. I'd feel happier if that was the case. Now, on the specific point that Mr Greer puts to me about any individuals who are involved from this country in the work of IDF, if there was to lead to any particular consideration of that behaviour. These would be judgments made independently by the prosecutorial authorities, and it would be wrong for me as First Minister to indicate what should or should not happen in those circumstances. But I understand the seriousness of the point that Mr Greer puts to me on this important question.
Ross Greer.
I'm grateful to the First Minister for that response. More than a third of the 60,000 Palestinians who have been confirmed to have been killed by Israel since 2023 were children, shot, bombed and starved to death with no way out. No company profiting from this apartheid and genocide should be allowed to profit here in Scotland. Last week, Palestinians celebrated when this Parliament took the historic decision to pass a Green proposal that Scotland boycott, sanction and divest from Israel. I want to thank the First Minister for his government's support, but now we must act to deliver on it. The very least the Scottish Government can do is take the same actions against Israel that it already has against Russia. In 2022, Scottish ministers rightly made an immediate call for every business here to sever links and cease trading with Russia. Palestinian lives are worth no less than Ukrainians or Scots, and this Parliament has voted for an economic boycott. So will the First Minister now call on Scottish businesses to join the global movement against apartheid Israel?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, the Government set out, in my statement to Parliament last Wednesday, set out a whole range of different interventions that the Government is going to take forward to address these issues. And I recognise the importance of following through on those commitments that have been given to Parliament, and I give Mr Greer the assurance that is exactly what the Government is doing and the action that we are taking. There is an appalling situation in Gaza. It has been escalated by the unwarranted and unjustifiable attack in Qatar, a state that is working to try to bring some degree of peace to the situation in the Middle East, and the attack on Qatar was an attack to undermine the very peace process that all of us want to see happening. So that brings me back to the starting point of Mr Greer's question, which is that there is a necessity for the United Kingdom Government to use its diplomatic influence with the Government of Israel to work with other partners to make it abundantly clear that the conduct of the Israeli Government is completely and utterly unacceptable, and there needs to be an immediate ceasefire and the flow of humanitarian aid, and we need to start the process of recovering for the lives of people in Palestine whose lives have been absolutely devastated by this unwarranted attack.
Question number 4, Ruth Maguire.
To ask the First Minister, in light of reports of the rising rate of poverty for families with a baby under 1 and evidence from Save the Children that increasing Best Start grant and Best Start food payments could significantly reduce the child poverty rate for this priority group, whether the Scottish Government will consider increasing these payments.
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, ending child poverty is the top priority of my government, and we look constantly for the measures that we can take to advance on that agenda. The delivery of our 5 family payments is making a real difference to families, worth around £25,000 by the time a child turns 16, compared to less than £2,000 in England and Wales. This is another example of why the Joseph Rowntree Foundation projects that Scotland will be the only part of the United Kingdom with falling child poverty levels next year. We are also taking forward other measures, such as the lifting of the 2-child limit, which, of course, if that action was taken by the United Kingdom Government, which it should be, that would free up to £150 million in Scotland, which could be spent on additional child poverty measures here in our own country.
Ruth Maguire.
Thank the First Minister for that answer. I know how committed the First Minister is to eliminating child poverty, and the work the Scottish Government has done to date has made a difference. There are lots of things that give babies and their parents a good start: love, information and support, play opportunities. But there's really strong evidence that where parents experience the psychological, emotional and material impact of poverty in their baby's first year, that it can have a deep and lasting impact on a baby's development. Does the First Minister recognise how much income matters to a baby's development, that spending on our youngest citizens is a crucial investment, and preventing the harms of poverty taking root in the first year of a child's life is transformational, not just for the individual baby and families, but on our society as a whole?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, I unreservedly accept the point that Ruth Maguire puts to me, and I have to say, if I may say so, it's a joy to have her here putting pressure on me after her return to Parliament. So I simply encourage Ruth Maguire to continue championing these issues and putting pressure on the government to do more, and I very much welcome her contribution to that. I accept the points that are made about the importance of that first year in a child's life. The government is actively exploring what more we can do. In my earlier answer, I said we're constantly looking to identify additional interventions we can make. Obviously, I have to be mindful of the resources that are available, but the plea that is made by Ruth Maguire is heard loud and clear here in the government bench, and I will do everything I can to make sure that the ambitions of the government to eradicate child poverty and to make that difference in the first year of a child's life is something that will be central to our thinking in the period to come.
Question number 5, Brian Whittle.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the First Minister what urgent steps the Scottish Government is taking in response to reports that nursing and midwifery vacancies have risen by 60% in just 6 months.
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, NHS Scotland vacancies follow a seasonal pattern. Mr Whittle compares June to December data, but vacancies can typically go up in the spring as people retire and decrease again over the summer and the autumn as new graduates join the workforce. Nursing and midwifery vacancies are 4% higher than at the same time last year, but this must be seen in the context of new investment by this government in our National Health Service, which means the workforce has grown over the last year. Overall nursing and midwifery staffing is up under the SNP government by 18.6% since 2006, and we saw a 100% increase in funded places for training between 2012 and 2022. Scotland has the best package of support in the UK for nursing and midwifery students.
Brian Whittle.
I thank the First Minister for that answer, but, Presiding Officer, these figures are just the latest in a long line of warnings about the perilous position of Scotland's healthcare workforce. But despite promise after promise from the SNP, the warnings keep coming and the progress never arrives. No NHS workforce plan, no end to delayed discharge, and nearly 1 million Scots on NHS waiting lists. Meanwhile, NHS staff are crying out for investment in facilities and technology to improve working conditions and patient care. Presiding Officer, last week the Health Secretary declared that a target to end waits of longer than a year was now just an aspiration. Well, aspiration will not solve this escalating staffing crisis. So can I ask, when will the First Minister take the real action to deal with the staffing crisis in our NHS?
First Minister.
Well, President Officer, on the substance of Mr Whittle's question, there are more nurses and midwives working in our NHS than when this government took office. Over 67,000 more nurses and midwives working in the NHS. So Mr Whittle says, when's the action going to come? The action has come and it has been delivered. He asks about the performance and other aspects of the health service. I have to tell Mr Whittle that the number of operations performed in July was the highest in 5 years, an 8.9% increase. Even more people are being treated at our national treatment centres this year than ever before. Our rapid cancer diagnostic services mean that people are getting faster diagnosis after referral. The number of hip and knee operations.
Let's hear the First Minister.
The number of hip and knee operations reached an all-time high in 2024. So Mr Whittle asks me, when will I take the action? I'm taking the action. The Health Secretary and I are working day in and day out to make sure the health service is delivering for the people of Scotland, and that progress is taking place the length and breadth of the country.
Emma Harper.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Our tireless and dedicated workforce is the greatest asset of our National Health Service. So while the Tories and Labour consistently talk down our NHS, can the First Minister just reiterate how the Scottish Government instead continues to support and grow our NHS workforce?
First Minister.
Well, President, so let me just say, as I've just said to Brian Whittle, but because there was so much shouting, I'll say it again so that people hear it this time. There's more staff working in our NHS now than when this government took office. Through record levels of investment, we have delivered 13 consecutive years of workforce growth. GP numbers are going up, and our Action for Change, our Agenda for Change staff, including our nurses and midwives, remain the best paid in the United Kingdom. So this government is prepared to invest in the workforce of our National Health Service because they're doing an excellent job. I pay tribute to them, and despite the points made by the Labour and Conservative parties, this government will take the action to put the budget in place to pay for these staff, to deliver the health service performance and to deliver for the people of Scotland.
Carol Mockin.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Scottish Labour warned the Scottish Government about the consequences of poor NHS workforce planning. And can I be absolutely clear about Scottish Labour's position on the staff? They are hard-working and dedicated, and we owe so much to them. But our staff are under intense pressure because of this SNP government. Agency spending is unsustainable, and now we see vacancy rates are risen to alarming levels. First Minister, rural areas such as Dumfries and Galloway in my own South Scotland region bear the consequences of this. Recruitment and retention of staff is a key challenge in these rural areas, and it has been under this SNP government. Apprenticeships offer a good way of expanding the workforce and providing flexibility to those living in these areas. Can I ask the First Minister whether this government has made any progress at all in developing apprenticeship models for healthcare workers as recommended in the Nursing and Midwifery Task Force report?
First Minister.
Well, that action is coming through the work of the Midwifery Task Force that is underway, so I can reassure Carol Mockin on that point. Now, Carol Mockin offered to make clear the Scottish Labour position. Well, let me make clear what the Scottish Labour position is on all of these issues. The Scottish Labour position is that none of them, not one single one of them, was prepared to put their support towards the government's budget, which actually pays for NHS staff the length and breadth of the country. That is a pathetic contribution from the Scottish Labour Party. And I'll tell Parliament what the other Scottish Labour position is. The Scottish Labour Party is umbilically linked to the Labour Party in London and the UK Labour government. And what is the Prime Minister doing? The Prime Minister is making it more difficult for healthcare workers to come from other countries to work in this country, and that is 26% of our social care staff come from other countries, and the Prime Minister is shutting the door on all of that. So the Scottish Labour Party has got nothing to offer this Parliament on the health service. Scottish Labour are delivering a lack of support to the National Health Service. This government is delivering for the NHS in Scotland.
Question number 6, Paul Sweeney.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the First Minister what additional support the Government is giving to the public dental service in light of reports that there has been a 10% rise in spending over the last 2 years due to increased demand.
First Minister.
It's inaccurate to conflate an increase in public dental service spending with an increase in dental access issues. The main role of the public dental service is to treat patients who have more complex needs, which cannot be managed by an independent dentist. We remain the only country in the United Kingdom to offer free regular dental examinations for everyone, and 95% of people in Scotland are registered with a dentist, and over 7 million courses of NHS dental treatment have been delivered to patients since November 2023.
Paul Sweeney.
The First Minister says that it shouldn't be conflated, but that's what public dental service dentists are telling us, that actually, whilst the First Minister observes correctly that it's meant to be a safety net and emergencies are for those with vulnerabilities, it is increasingly filling in the gaps where routine NHS dental provision has collapsed. In areas such as Fife, Moray and in the Borders, dentists no longer treat NHS patients, even if they're on their lists. So the only option is to seek care from the public dental service safety net or use their savings to pay for private care. It isn't good enough, First Minister. So what is the First Minister doing to tackle the scourge of dental deserts in Scotland and end this growing over-reliance on the already overstretched public dental service?
First Minister.
Well, what the Government is doing is the Government is putting in place additional financial support to areas where access is particularly challenging, especially in rural and island areas. Now, that funding has recently supported the opening of 5 new surgeries as a consequence of the investment, creating thousands more new NHS registrations. But I'll tell Mr Sweeney what's not helping, and it's back to the point I've just made to Carol Morgan, because this can't be escaped. This is the practical reality of the approach being taken by the UK Government to the issue of migration, because it is damaging. If we look at the position that we have got to work with other countries to bring dental practitioners into this country to supplement the other training work that we're undertaking. In July, the Labour Government in Westminster removed dental hygienists, dental technicians and dental nurses from the skilled worker sponsorship scheme. Now, that is the Labour Government in Westminster, making it more difficult for us to deliver public services in Scotland. So I encourage Mr Sweeney to join and work with the Government in trying to ensure we have a rational debate about migration, a rational approach to migration, rather than the chase to compete with reform, which has consumed the Starmer Government in London.
Question number 7, Jamie Green.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the First Minister whether the Scottish Government will review its policy on public sector settlement agreements in light of reports that £4 million of public money was spent on public sector payoffs in 2023 to 2024.
First Minister.
A review of the severance policy for Scotland concluded in 2023 and was reflected in robust controls being in place to scrutinise expenditure in line with the Scottish Public Finance Manual. Settlement agreements address specific employment issues in individual organisations, and the number and the nature of these can vary between years. It should be noted that settlement agreements are used rarely and only in very limited circumstances.
Jamie Green.
Can I thank the First Minister for that answer? I do beg to differ, though. That was £4 million last year. The year before, it was £1.5 million. In fact, over the last 5 years, there have been 300 such settlements, costing £10 million of public money, and a third of those came with confidentiality clauses attached to them. £10 million, First Minister, would go some way, for example, to fund Liz Smith's outdoor education bill, wouldn't it? But my primary concern about all of this is what seems to be a growing trend of reward for failure amongst senior public sector executives, be it Ferguson Marine, the Water Industry Commission, the NHS, the SQA. Well-paid civil servants are walking away from failure with a large cheque in return for a gagging order, whilst those at the bottom of the pay ladder are struggling. So can I ask the Scottish Government if they think these huge payoffs are appropriate, and when, First Minister, will we see an end to the secrecy around these deals as well?
Always through the Chair, please. First Minister.
First of all, on the question Mr Green raised in his point, the question of low pay. And of course, in the pay deals that the Government has presided over, we have a much more significant emphasis on increasing pay at the lower levels of pay than at the higher levels of pay. And that is now, Mr Green shakes his head, but I invite him to go and look at the pay deals that the Government has presided over, and that's exactly what has happened in countless pay deals. My second point is that I actually have a lot of sympathy with the point that Mr Green makes, because he said to me that these arrangements should not be in relation to failure, and they shouldn't be. There should be proper accountability in the way in which these are exercised, which is why the Scottish Public Finance Manual is constructed in the way it is, to make sure that point is central to that decision-making. Now, there is variation from year to year in these figures, but I think it is important that it is recognised that we have rules in place around about how these agreements can be put in place. Those rules must be rigorously applied in all circumstances, and there must be a culture of delivering on the expectations of ministers and the public in all of the actions of government.
Thank you. We move to constituency and general supplementaries, and I call Michael Matheson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The First Minister will be aware of the ongoing concern for the important manufacturing jobs in my constituency at Alexander Dennis's, the bus manufacturer. Today, the company have announced a final extension to their consultation period, which will now conclude on Monday of next week, and also that the trade union ballot has overwhelmingly supported the introduction of a furlough scheme, which is to be welcomed. However, he will recognise that critical to securing these manufacturing jobs for the future is securing new orders. Can I therefore ask the First Minister, can he set out what action the Scottish Government have taken to support Alexander Dennis in securing new orders, and if those new orders and the negotiations have been progressed sufficiently in advance of Monday, when the consultation closes, where the outcome of those negotiations will be announced?
First Minister.
Can I first of all thank Mr Matheson for his assiduous representation on behalf of his constituents, and share with him that the Government has been working intensively with partners, including the trade unions, Scottish Enterprise, Transport Scotland and Alexander Dennis, and we've had full and active cooperation involving a number of ministers over the course of the last few weeks and months, and it has been an entirely constructive period of engagement. I very much welcome the positive developments that have taken place. Mr Matheson referred to the extension of the current consultation period to Monday, which is very welcome. I also welcome the decision of the trade unions to take forward the modernisation operations that have been put in place by Alexander Dennis. These are all encouraging signs, and we are working collaboratively with the company and with others in relation to the sourcing of orders. I expect there will be the ability to provide a further update on this next week, and the Deputy First Minister will be able to update Parliament accordingly on the steps that we are taking in relation to a salary support scheme with ADL and other relevant issues in relation to new orders.
Liz Smith.
Does the First Minister agree that when a bill passes at stage 1, thereby reflecting the will of Parliament that it should proceed to stage 2, the Scottish Government has a democratic obligation to lodge a financial resolution?
First Minister.
I understand the importance that Liz Smith attaches to the issue that she raises about her current bill. I am very mindful of that support, and I am mindful of the position of Parliament. But the Government has got an obligation, as I have rehearsed on a number of occasions during this exchange at First Minister's question time, to be mindful of how we are able to put in place the resources that will enable us to fund the commitments that Parliament legislates for. That is an absolute obligation on the Government when we bring forward legislation, and we have to be satisfied that such an approach applies to all legislation.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Some of the bravest people I have the privilege to represent depend on the Disability Resource Centre in Paisley. It's just one of the services facing closure next week as the local Health and Social Care Partnership tries to fill a multi-million-pound black hole in its budget. My constituents who go there tell me the centre gives them a purpose in life, a reason to get up in the morning. One told me that he has struggled to eat due to the worry caused by the proposed closure, and that he feels a sense of hopelessness. The First Minister will be aware that the Scottish Government funds both Renfrewshire Council and the local health board, the bodies that make up the Health and Social Care Partnership. The people who rely on the Disability Resource Centre in Paisley are asking if the First Minister will come to their aid. Will he?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, I understand the importance of services such as the one that Mr Bibby raises with me. The Government has, in its financial provision, put in place increased support for both Renfrewshire Council and for Greater Glasgow and Clyde Health Board in the budget provision that we put in place, and both of those bodies fund the integrated joint board that will consider these issues. I certainly think, in terms of the outlook of the Government and the policy position that we take, we encourage the provision of early intervention services, because by supporting early intervention services of the type that Mr Bibby raises, we can invariably reduce demand on much more expensive and acute services, but also give purpose and meaning to the lives of individuals who are affected by these services. So I encourage the Integrated Joint Board at Renfrewshire to consider all of these questions, because it is important that services and support of this type is available to individuals at local level.
Stuart McMillan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The First Minister will be aware of the concerns raised about the delivery of the capital investment into Ferguson Marine. So I'd be grateful if the First Minister can provide an update on this capital investment as proposed by the Scottish Government and also passed at the budget earlier on this year.
Minister.
So the Government has committed to invest £14.2 million over a 2-year period in Ferguson Marine, subject to due diligence and commercial standards being met. This investment has already commenced with targeted early action to address essential repairs, health and safety improvements and upgrades to facilities and equipment that directly support the Yard's current projects. The Government will continue to support the business to secure new work and to deliver a sustainable future for the Yard and its skilled workforce, and that involves also committing to investment in the Yard.
Miles Briggs.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Scottish Government announced in July £5 million to help with the recruitment and retention of skilled staff and sustainable services for the hospice sector. Scottish ministers have still not released this funding. However, we have seen the Edinburgh Health and Social Care Partnership decide to reverse a 3% inflationary uplift to funding for hospices here in the capital. St Columba's Hospice Care and Marie Curie Edinburgh are warning that essential palliative end-of-life services are now at serious risk due to this funding decision. Does the First Minister agree with me that it is totally unacceptable for our hospices to have funding given with one hand and then taken away with the other? Will he ask the partnership to reverse this decision? And will the First Minister now investigate why Scottish Government funding for our hospice sector has not been delivered?
First Minister.
I'll look into that point about timing, about the delivery, because if the commitment has been made, then the delivery should be put in place. But I don't have that answer at the front of my mind just now, but I'll take that away and explore it. St Columba's Hospice is particularly precious to me. My dear, beloved late mother was a volunteer there for many years, so it's an institution close to my heart. So I'll take that away and find out what the situation is. In relation to the giving with the one hand and the taking away with the other, I don't approve of that. I think we shouldn't. If the Government gives a commitment which was merited for the hospice sector, and it was necessary for the hospice sector, that shouldn't be used as an excuse by other organisations to take away their funding at local level. That's just not on, really. So let me take away this issue. I'm very sympathetic to the point that Mr Briggs makes to me, and I'll try to establish what the situation is.
Michael Mara.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. At the preliminary hearing of the LGML inquiry yesterday, counsel to the chair of the inquiry revealed deep concern at the status of the independent clinical review process, which is stalling and threatens the progress of the inquiry. Lord Weir is clearly very concerned the Scottish Government have refused to attend meetings with his team to progress this crucial issue. The Government are not participants in the independent clinical reviews. They establish them and they sponsor them, and it's incumbent on the Government to make them work. So what will the First Minister do to break this impasse and deliver the justice for victims in Dundee and across Tayside, given they have suffered so much already?
First Minister.
I think as Mr Mara knows, I have constituents who are involved in this issue, so I'm anxious to make sure that that not just their interests, but all of my constituents, so I care deeply about them, but that all of those affected in the LGML inquiry are properly supported. I think I'm going to explore the issue that Mr Mara raises with me, because I think I'm concerned that this is an independent clinical review, so it has to be independent of the Government to command confidence from those affected. But pressure for the Government to then get involved might undermine that independence. So I just need to take that issue away and see what we can do to try to make sure that nobody loses confidence about the method of engagement. Obviously, if an inquiry chair like Lord Weir makes comments of that type, then I have got to take that deadly seriously, which I will do. But I suspect there's something possibly in the governance of all of this that needs to be looked at. But I'll take that away and explore that and write to Mr Mara.
And Pam Gossel.
Sorry, Presiding Officer. I have been flooded with emails by constituents who have expressed concerns over the poor enforcement of pavement parking ban. The ban went live on the 1st of September for Eastern Bartonshire. However, there seems to be a confusion over how it has been implemented. Constituents, including disabled constituents, have said that cars are now pushed onto the road parking, making it difficult for blue light services to pass. However, on the other hand, other constituents have written to me saying that cars are still parked on pavements, making access difficult. Can I therefore ask the First Minister, why has the Scottish Government's guidance led to such a poorly executed plan?
First Minister.
Well, this is this is a matter for local authorities. I know I'm responsible for everything, but the parking arrangements in Bishop Briggs are just a little bit beyond me, perhaps. This is for East Bartonshire Council to sort out. They've got the responsibility, and the government sets out the guidance, and it's up to councils to get on with it. There's plenty. I see the application of the pavement parking ban in my own constituency. Folk are just getting on with it. Council's getting on with it. So there's no reason why Eastern Bartonshire Council can't get on with it. So I invite Pam Gossel to take it up with Eastern Bartonshire Council and see what she can do about the parking.
Thank you. That concludes First Minister's questions. The next item of business is a member's business debate in the name of Sarah Boyack. There will now be a short suspension to allow those leaving the chamber and the gallery to do so.
Hello and welcome to Broadcasting Scotland. My name is Lewis McGlynn.
Hello and welcome to Broadcasting Scotland. My name is Saoirse Healy.
Hello and welcome to Broadcasting Scotland. My name is Donald C. Stewart. Broadcasting Scotland is Scotland's independent broadcaster, providing factual news, reporting on the issues important to the people of Scotland.
We are committed to public service broadcasting, and with your support, we will produce even more programmes.
Provide opportunities for young people interested in media production and broadcasting, and challenge preconceptions of what Scottish media looks like, amplifying Scotland's voice and reflecting its communities.
We can already deliver high-quality live news, and we will create the highest quality programmes for you to enjoy. But we can only do that with your support.
So please subscribe to and share our channel or donate to Broadcasting Scotland via the link in the description. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.